My daughter left her newborn on my doorstep so she could go out and enjoy her life. I raised that child on a small pension, doing everything I could to give him stability and love. 24 years later, he became a powerful name in the tech world, and today, my daughter walked back into my home with lawyers, demanding what she called her share. My grandson stepped forward, looked straight at her, and said 3 simple words that changed everything. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels." The rain that night felt endless, heavier than it had been all week. October 15th, 1999. A Friday that should have been quiet, maybe even peaceful. I was 46, newly widowed, still learning how to survive on the $850 a month my late husband's pension provided. I was trying to understand a life that suddenly felt empty and fragile. The last thing I ever expected was to find a baby on my porch. I opened the door because I thought I heard crying through the storm. At first, I assumed it was a stray animal. We had plenty in the neighborhood, but when the door swung open, cold air rushed in, and there he was, a tiny baby, curled into a worn car seat, no more than a few weeks old. His face was red from crying, his body wrapped in a blue hospital blanket. Next to him sat a diaper bag and an envelope with my name written on it. I knew that handwriting instantly. It was my daughter's. My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope. The moment I lifted the baby, he stopped crying, as if he knew he was finally safe. His dark eyes looked up at me with a trust I wasn't sure I deserved. The note was short, written on torn notebook paper. Even now, I remember every word. "Mom, I can't do this. I need to live my life. His name is Marcus. There's $200 in the bag. Don't try to find me." $200. That was what she thought her child was worth. I stood there in the doorway, rain soaking my slippers, holding that note while this beautiful baby stared at me as if begging me not to walk away too. The weight of that moment nearly crushed me. I was still grieving. My apartment was small. My money barely covered rent and utilities. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and suddenly responsible for a life when most people my age were thinking about quiet weekends, not midnight feedings. But when I looked at Marcus, I saw my daughter as a baby. The same dark hair, the same determined chin, the same cautious look, like he was trying to decide whether the world was kind or cruel. My daughter had left home at 17, not because of anger or arguments, but because she wanted freedom. She said I was holding her back. Over the years, our relationship faded into brief calls, usually when she needed money. She had mentioned being pregnant months earlier, sounding excited, confident, saying she had everything under control. Apparently, this was what she meant. I carried Marcus inside and shut the door against the storm. My living room felt smaller instantly, but warmer, fuller. I didn't have a crib, I didn't have formula or supplies. I didn't even know if I remembered how to care for a baby anymore. But as I watched him rest, warm and dry, something shifted inside me. For the first time since my husband passed, I felt needed. That night, I barely slept. I checked on Marcus every hour, afraid something might go wrong. I made him a little bed in the bottom drawer of my dresser, lining it with towels and that blue blanket. Every sound he made sent my heart racing. But beneath the fear was a quiet certainty. I wasn't going to let him feel unwanted. I wasn't going to let him grow up wondering why no one chose him. I chose him. And that choice changed both of our lives forever. Whenever he cried, I would scoop him up and walk the length of my tiny apartment, softly humming songs I barely remembered from when my daughter was little. By the time morning came, my choice was clear. I was going to raise Marcus myself. I would give him the love and steadiness his mother had turned away from. I would make sure he grew up knowing he mattered, even if the person who brought him into the world had walked away. I called in sick to my part-time job at the grocery store. I couldn't leave him alone, and hiring help wasn't an option. Instead, I wrapped him up and walked 6 blocks to the drugstore, using part of the money my daughter had left to buy formula and diapers. At the checkout, the cashier smiled at him and asked how old he was. 3 weeks, I said without hesitation. Then I added, He's my grandson. It was the first time I'd said it aloud, and it felt right. More right than anything had in a long time. Within days, we fell into a rhythm. Marcus woke every 3 hours without fail. I fed him, changed him, walked him until he drifted back to sleep. During his naps, I tried to rest or figure out how to stretch my already tight budget to cover one more life. I contacted social services, not to give him up, but to understand what I needed to do legally. The caseworker, a tired woman named Helen, explained that without my daughter's cooperation, adoption wasn't possible. But as his grandmother, I could apply for guardianship, especially since his mother had left him behind. "Do you think she'll come back?" Helen asked during her visit. I handed her the note. She read it carefully, then shook her head. She told me this happened more often than people realized, young parents who weren't ready. She said I seemed fully capable of caring for Marcus, and that guardianship shouldn't be a problem. The word guardian felt temporary, like my daughter might return one day and take him back. I pushed that thought aside. She had made her decision. Now I had made mine. What hurt most wasn't the lack of sleep or the constant money worries. It was the silence. No call to ask if I'd found him, no message to check if he was okay, nothing. It was as if she had erased both of us from her life. 3 weeks after she left him, I was feeding Marcus when the phone rang. My heart jumped. Maybe it was her. Maybe she'd changed her mind. But it was only a sales call. As I hung up, Marcus looked up at me with those serious dark eyes, and I understood something that would guide every choice I made from that moment on. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't helping out until his mother got herself together. This was forever. Marcus was mine now, as surely as if I had given birth to him, and I would never let him feel unwanted again, no matter the cost. The years blended together into a blur of bottles, diapers, and nights that never seemed long enough. By the time Marcus was walking, earlier than most babies, I was used to running on 3 hours of sleep, instant coffee, and sheer determination. Money was always tight. My pension had to cover rent, utilities, food, diapers, formula, and later clothes he outgrew almost as soon as I bought them. I learned to shop secondhand, clip coupons obsessively, and plan meals around whatever was cheapest that week at the store where I still worked part-time. Marcus was an easy child in many ways. He didn't cry without reason, slept through the night early, and had a way of looking at me that made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Still, raising a child alone in my late 40s on a fixed income drained me in ways I hadn't imagined. I'll never forget the first time he got sick. He was 8 months old, burning with fever in the middle of the night. I didn't have a car and couldn't afford a ride, so I wrapped him in blankets and walked 16 blocks to the hospital at 2 in the morning. He recovered quickly, just a virus, but I'll always remember carrying him through empty streets, hoping I was doing the right thing. By his second birthday, my living room no longer looked like an adult space. Toys were everywhere. Children's books replaced my old novels, and every sharp corner was padded. My entire life revolved around this little boy who called me Gamma because Grandma was still too hard to say. That's when my daughter called for the first time since she left him. I was feeding Marcus lunch, mashed bananas and crackers smeared across his tray, when the phone rang. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another unwanted call, but something told me to answer. "Mom." The voice sounded older, different, but I knew it instantly. My heart stopped. It was her. I glanced at Marcus, who was watching me with wide, curious eyes, banana smeared across his cheek. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm in Los Angeles," she said. "I'm doing really well, Mom. I'm in a band now, and we're close to getting signed." 2 years. She had been gone for 2 full years, and this was why she was calling. "Do you want to know how your son is doing?" The question came out sharper than I meant it to. There was a pause. "How is he?" "His name is Marcus. He's 2. He's bright, funny, and he calls me Gamma because he doesn't know he has a mother who walked away." "Mom, don't say it like that," she replied. "I knew he'd be fine with you. You're great with kids." Great with kids. As if raising her child alone was just another skill of mine, like baking or keeping track of birthdays. "What do you want, Nani?" I asked. She hesitated, then sighed. "Things are a little tight right now. The band's between gigs and I'm struggling with rent. I was hoping you could send a couple hundred just until we're stable again." I looked down at Marcus, reaching for me with sticky hands. $200, the same amount she had left behind when she disappeared. "No." "What?" I said no. I repeated, "I'm raising your son on $850 a month. I don't have extra money to send so you can chase dreams in California." She went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice carried that familiar sharp edge from her teenage years. "Fine. I get it. You're punishing me for leaving." "I'm not punishing you," I said calmly. "I'm protecting him, and I'm protecting myself." "Whatever, Mom. I thought you'd want to help your daughter." Then she hung up. I sat there holding the phone, watching Marcus try to climb out of his high chair, and realized I wasn't sad. I was angry. Angry that she could disappear for 2 years, then call asking for money without once asking about his first steps, his first words, his favorite book, or the way he smiled just like she used to. Marcus stretched his arms toward me. "Gamma, up." I lifted him out of the chair and held him close, breathing in that warm, familiar scent that already felt like it was slipping away as he grew. The calls didn't stop. They came every few months, sometimes after a year of silence, always when she needed something. The band fell apart. She moved cities, moved in with people who didn't work out, tried school and quit, bounced from job to job. Every call came with a new story and the same request for money, and every time I said no. By the time Marcus was 5 and starting kindergarten, I dreaded the phone ringing. Not because I missed my daughter, but because her calls unsettled the quiet, steady life Marcus and I had built. After each one, he would ask questions. "Gamma, who was that?" "Just someone I used to know." "Why do you look sad?" How do you explain to a 5-year-old that his mother only calls to ask for money, never to ask about him? How do you explain that she never once asked to speak to him, never sent a card, never wondered if he was safe or happy? I chose not to tell him. Maybe that was a mistake, but I couldn't bear the thought of him feeling rejected the way I had. Instead, I told him his mother was very young when he was born and wasn't ready to be a parent, but that she cared about him and wanted him to be happy. I said sometimes adults make hard choices, and this was hers. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't entirely false either. Marcus accepted it the way children often do. He focused on school, friends, and the life we shared. He was curious, always asking questions, always eager to learn. Money was always tight. I took on whatever work I could find to supplement my pension: cleaning, babysitting, seasonal jobs. Marcus learned early that we couldn't afford everything, but he never complained. Books from the library made him just as happy as toys from a store. Day trips to the lake felt like adventures. The hardest conversation came when he was 8. We were sitting at the kitchen table, working on a school project about family trees. He had drawn me and himself, but left the other branches empty. He looked up at me and asked very simply, "Gamma, where's my dad?" I had rehearsed that moment in my head for years, but I still wasn't ready for how directly he asked. "Your father wasn't able to be part of your life," I said gently. "Sometimes that happens." "Is he dead, like Grandpa Robert?" "No," I answered. "He's alive. He just made different choices." Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing the answer the way he did with serious things, then went back to his drawing, trusting me completely. "Do you think he knows about me?" Marcus asked quietly. "I think he probably does," I replied. "Do you think he's sorry he's not here?" That question shattered something inside me. I looked at him and said the only truth that mattered. "Any man would be lucky to have you as his son, Marcus. If he doesn't see that, then that's his loss, not yours." Marcus nodded, satisfied, and went back to his project, carefully drawing hearts around the branch that connected the two of us. That night, after he fell asleep, I cried for the first time in years. Not for myself, not for the years of sacrifice, but for this kind, brilliant boy who deserved more than life had given him. By the time Marcus turned 10, our life had settled into a steady rhythm. He came home from school, did his homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner, and in the evenings we watched television or read library books together. On weekends, we explored the city by bus, museums, parks, free concerts. We built our own small, quiet world, just the two of us. And it was a good world. But I was aging. My back hurt from years of physical work. My eyesight worsened, and new glasses were a luxury I kept postponing. Some mornings getting moving took longer than it used to. I worried about what would happen if I got sick, if I couldn't work, if something happened to me. Under my bed, I kept a box of important papers, Marcus's birth certificate, guardianship documents, my will, leaving him everything I had, which wasn't much, but it was something. I also kept letters in that box. Letters from Nani that arrived over the years, usually around the same time as her phone calls asking for money. In them, she described her life like an endless adventure, new cities, new people, new opportunities. She mentioned Marcus now and then, usually to say she hoped he was doing well, or that he would understand her choices someday. What she never wrote was that she wanted to see him. What she never asked was to speak to him. What she never said was that she missed him. Those letters confirmed what I had known all along. To her, Marcus wasn't a son she longed for. He was a chapter she had closed, a responsibility she believed she had successfully escaped. The last letter came when Marcus was 10. She was living in Phoenix, working at a resort, dating someone new. She wrote that she was thinking about getting married again and that her boyfriend didn't know Marcus existed. She said it was better to start fresh. She wrote that Marcus was happy with me, that I was better at being a mother than she ever was, and that maybe someday, when he was older, they could figure out a relationship. For now, she said, it was best if I handled everything. I burned that letter over the kitchen sink, watching the paper curl and darken, but the words stayed with me. That night, I made a decision I would keep for the next 13 years. I would never tell Marcus about those letters. I would never let him know how many times his mother had chosen herself over him. I would protect him from that truth for as long as I could. Looking back now, I don't know if it was the right choice. But at the time, watching my 10-year-old grandson sleep peacefully in his small bedroom, surrounded by books, drawings, and model airplanes, I couldn't bring myself to tell him that his mother was living a full life, as if he had never existed. Some truths felt too heavy for a child to carry. Marcus was happy. He was thriving. He never once said he felt something was missing. But deep down, I knew those hidden truths would surface someday. And when they did, everything we had built would be tested. 24 years passed. That's how long it had been since the rainy October night that changed everything. Marcus was no longer the baby I'd found on my porch. He was a grown man now, 24 years old, living downtown, running a technology company that seemed to grow faster every month. I still lived in the same small apartment where I had raised him, even though he'd been urging me to move somewhere nicer for the past 2 years. The rent was still $520, a rare bargain now, though the building had aged along with me. The stairs creaked. The heating failed more often than it should. The neighbors had changed from families to students who played loud music and left trash in the hallway, but this apartment held 24 years of memories, height marks on the doorframe from every birthday, a small burn on the counter from when Marcus tried to make breakfast at 12 and forgot the pan, the living room where we did homework, played chess, and watched his favorite movies until I knew every line. Marcus visited every Sunday without fail. It had been our tradition since he was small. Sunday dinner, just the two of us. No matter how busy he became, he never missed it. He usually arrived around 4 with groceries, ready to cook together like we always had. But today was different. I could see it on his face the moment he walked through the door. He looked unsettled, distracted in a way I had never seen before. Marcus had always been focused, even as a child. When he set his mind on something, nothing pulled him off course. That same determination was what made him a top student and later a successful entrepreneur. "Gamma," he said, setting the grocery bags on the counter. Even at 24, he still called me that. What started as a baby's nickname had become something deeper, full of meaning. We need to talk. My chest tightened. In my experience, those words never brought good news. What's wrong? I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a habit he'd had since childhood whenever he was anxious or thinking hard. I got a call yesterday from a law firm in Phoenix. Phoenix. The word hit me hard. The last letter from Nani, the one I had burned, had come from Phoenix. What kind of call? I asked. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. They said they represent my mother, my biological mother. He looked up at me, confusion clear in his eyes. They said she wants to meet me. For 24 years I had feared this moment. I knew it would come one day, but I had hoped it would be far in the future, maybe even after I was gone, so I wouldn't have to watch her walk back into his life after I had carried all the weight of raising him. What did you say to them? I asked. I told them I needed time. I wanted to talk to you first. He reached across the table and took my hand. His hands were strong now, rough from the projects he worked on to unwind from his demanding job. Gamma, you never really told me why she left. I know she was young, but why didn't she ever try to contact me? And why now? The questions I had avoided for more than 2 decades filled the room. I looked at him, at the man he had become, and felt the weight of every truth I had kept hidden. It's complicated, I said softly, repeating the same answer I'd used for years. I'm 24, he replied. I can handle complicated. He was right, but handling the truth didn't mean it wouldn't hurt. I had spent his entire life shielding him from the knowledge that his mother had chosen, again and again, to stay away. Not because she couldn't find him, not because life got in the way, but because she didn't want the responsibility. There's something else, Marcus continued carefully. The lawyers said she's been keeping track of my success, that she's proud of me. A short, bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Proud? Marcus's eyes sharpened. What does that mean? I stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. I went to the sink and started washing dishes that were already clean, scrubbing too hard. Gamma, please, he said. Talk to me. The urgency in his voice broke through my defenses. He deserved the truth, even if it hurt. I turned back to him. She's been aware of you, Marcus, but not in the way you think. She's called me over the years, not often, usually when she needed money. His expression changed as the words sank in. She never once asked to speak to you, I continued. She never asked how you were doing in school, what you liked, whether you were happy. She never sent a birthday card, never a holiday gift, never even a photo. Pain flickered across his face, and it nearly undid me. She called you for money, he said slowly, and you never told me. I was protecting you, I said quietly. From what? His voice rose. From knowing my mother was alive and chose not to be part of my life? Anger edged his words, something I had rarely heard from him. Even as a teenager, he had been calm, thoughtful, steady. From knowing you weren't important enough to her to sacrifice anything for? I said. From knowing that while I was working multiple jobs to give you what you needed, she was asking me to send her money so she could chase her dreams. From knowing that she's reaching out now, not because she misses you, but because you've become successful enough to matter to her. Marcus stood abruptly and paced the room. You should have told me, he said, when I was 5 and asked about my dad, when I was 10 and had to draw a family tree, when I was 16 and told you how lucky I felt to have you. I watched him move back and forth, my heart breaking all over again, knowing that the truth I had hidden to protect him had finally arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. I felt tears rising, burning behind my eyes. When was I supposed to tell you that your mother saw you as a mistake she fixed by leaving you on my doorstep? That wouldn't have been fair. None of this was fair, Marcus. It wasn't fair that she left you. It wasn't fair that I had to choose between my own future and your childhood. It wasn't fair that you grew up without parents your own age, without siblings, without the kind of family most children have. I took a shaky breath. But we made it work anyway. We built something good together, didn't we? Marcus stopped pacing and looked at me. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the man who loved me and was grateful for everything I had done, fighting with the son who was hurt and angry about being kept in the dark, even if it had been meant to protect him. "Yes," he said finally. "We did build something good, but Gamma, those were my choices to make. Whether I wanted a relationship with her or not should have been my decision. You took that away from me." He was right. I knew he was. But knowing it didn't make it easier to accept. "I know," I whispered. "I know I should have told you. I just couldn't stand the thought of her hurting you again." "Again?" he asked. I closed my eyes. Another truth I had never shared. "She hurt you when she left, Marcus. You were so small, but you cried for days. You kept looking at the door like you were waiting for someone to come back. For weeks, every sound in the hallway made you jump. You were just a baby, but somehow you knew you'd been abandoned." Silence filled the room, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Eventually, Marcus sat back down across from me. His voice was calmer now, but still tight. "The lawyers said she wants to arrange a meeting. They didn't say exactly why, just that she thinks it's time we have a relationship." He paused, then added, "They also mentioned that she knows about my company, about how well it's doing." There it was, the confirmation I had been dreading. "What are you going to do?" I asked. He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally looked up, his expression was steady but sad. "I'm going to meet her. I need to know who she is, what she wants, and why she left. I need to hear it for myself, not just through the lens of protection." My heart broke, but I nodded. "Okay." "Will you be angry with me if I do?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. After everything, he was still worried about hurting me. "Oh, sweetheart, no," I said softly. "I could never be angry at you for wanting to know your mother. I'm scared because I don't trust her reasons, but I'm not angry." Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. "Whatever happens, you're still my Gamma. You're the one who raised me, believed in me, sacrificed for me. That doesn't change." I squeezed his hand, trying to hold on to the moment, because a quiet part of me feared everything was about to shift. "When is the meeting?" I asked. "Next week. She's flying in from Phoenix." Of course she was, coming into our world, the life Marcus and I had built without her. "Marcus," I said carefully, "there's something else you need to know. Something legal." He looked tired. "What is it?" "When she left, I became your legal guardian, not your adoptive parent. That was all I could manage back then. It seemed like enough." I took a breath. "But legally, she's still your mother. She still has certain rights." I watched the realization hit him, the color draining slightly from his face. "What kind of rights?" "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "I never looked into it because I never thought she'd come back. But Marcus, successful people attract attention. If she's been watching your career, if she knows the value of your company, I don't think this is about reconnecting. I think it's about what benefits her." He stood again, slower this time, more thoughtful. "I still need to meet her. I need to hear her out. But I'll be careful. I'll remember everything you've told me." As he gathered the groceries we'd never used for our Sunday dinner, a cold feeling settled over me. This apartment, this life, this bond that had carried us for 24 years suddenly felt fragile, like it could be shaken by one conversation with a woman who had never earned the right to be called his mother. After he left, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the phone. Part of me wanted to call him back, to beg him not to go, to stay safe in the world we had built together. But I knew this was a step he had to take on his own, no matter how much it terrified me. I knew then that I had lost the right to make that choice for him the moment I decided to keep her letters hidden. Outside my window, the October light was fading into dusk. 24 years earlier, on a night just like this, Nilani had left her baby on my doorstep and vanished. Now she was coming back, and a terrible fear settled in my chest that this time she might try to take him with her. Marcus chose a downtown coffee shop for the meeting, neutral ground. I wasn't invited, of course, but that entire Tuesday afternoon I paced my apartment, checking my phone every few minutes. When it finally rang around 4, I answered on the first ring. "Gamma!" His voice sounded hollow, drained in a way I had never heard before. "How did it go?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Can you come to my office? I need to show you something." The bus ride downtown felt endless. His company was on the 15th floor of a glass building that still made me nervous every time I entered. The receptionist, Sarah, who always greeted me with a smile, looked worried as she sent me back to Marcus's office. He was sitting behind his desk, staring at a stack of papers spread out in front of him. He looked older somehow, as if a few hours had taken years from him. "Marcus." He looked up, pain and confusion written all over his face. Without a word, he slid the papers toward me. They were legal documents. Even without understanding every line, the message was clear. Nilani wasn't asking for a relationship. She was seeking legal recognition as his mother, along with financial claims tied to that status. "I don't understand all of it," Marcus said quietly, "but she brought lawyers, more than one. They explained enough." My legs felt weak as I sat down across from him. "Tell me what happened." He leaned back, rubbing his face. "She looked exactly like the photos. Older, but the same smile. She hugged me, Gamma. She cried, said she missed me, said leaving me was the hardest thing she'd ever done." I could picture it perfectly. Nilani had always known exactly what to say. "She told me how young and scared she was, how she knew you'd take better care of me, how she regretted it for years but was too ashamed to reach out." His voice hardened. "She said she's been following my career, that she's proud, that she always knew I'd do something big." Then his expression darkened. "That's when the lawyers stepped in." He picked up one document. "Because she never formally gave up her parental rights, and because I was never adopted, they claim she still has legal standing as my mother." The words felt like ice. "What kind of standing?" I asked. "Mostly financial." He exhaled sharply. "They mentioned something called filial responsibility laws. In some places, adult children can be required to support parents if they have the means." My stomach dropped. "She's not elderly, she's 47. "I said that too," Marcus replied. "They said age doesn't matter as much as financial hardship." He set the paper down hard. "She's in debt, credit cards, a failed business, medical bills from surgery last year. She's close to bankruptcy." Of course she was. Nilani had never handled money well. "She wants help," he continued. "Not as a favor, as a right, and she's ready to take this to court if she has to." "Can she really do that?" I asked. "According to her lawyers, maybe." He shook his head. "The law is complicated. It could drag on for months. It would be expensive. Public." Public. That was the real danger. Marcus had built his company carefully, his reputation brick by brick. A legal fight with an absent mother would attract exactly the wrong kind of attention. I looked at him. "What did you tell her?" He turned back toward me, anger finally breaking through his calm. "I told her no. I told her I needed time to have my own lawyer review the documents. She said she understood and hoped we could resolve everything as a family without going to court. As a family." The words felt bitter, even hearing them secondhand. "That's when I asked her about you," Marcus said. My stomach tightened. "What about me?" I asked why, if family mattered so much to her, she had never reached out to you. Why she never thanked you for raising me. Why she never asked how you were doing or acknowledged what you gave up for me. I held my breath. "She said she assumed you were fine," Marcus continued. "That raising me probably gave you fulfillment, since you never had other children. She said she figured you enjoyed having a purpose in your retirement years." The cruelty of it stole the air from my lungs. 24 years of my life reduced to a pleasant pastime, something to keep me busy. "But then she said something else," Marcus added quietly. "She said she hoped there wouldn't be any tension between you and her because she'd hate for our family reunion to cause trouble for someone who had been so helpful over the years." I felt cold all over. "She was warning me," he said. Not outright, but it was clear. If you interfered, there could be consequences. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. What kind of consequences? I don't know, he said. I didn't ask. I just wanted to leave and talk to you. He gathered the papers from his desk. But Gamma, you need to understand something. Whatever legal claims she thinks she has, none of it changes how I feel about you. You're my family. You're the one who raised me. You're the reason I'm who I am. The certainty in his voice brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. I'm not just saying it, he replied. It's the truth. He came around the desk and took my hands. And I'm not going to let her manipulate me. I'm not going to let her hurt you. You don't understand what she's capable of, I said. When she wants something, she doesn't stop. She'll twist emotions, bend rules, find any opening she can. Then we'll stop her, he said simply. That stubborn determination was the same one he'd had as a child, the one that made him believe he could build anything if he tried hard enough. It won't be easy, I warned him, and it won't be cheap. I can afford good lawyers, he said. That's one benefit of the success she's trying to use against me. What I can't afford is letting her tear apart what we've built. Over the next few days, Marcus met with 2 different law firms that specialized in family law. The results were mixed. Her case wasn't strong, but it wasn't meaningless either. The fact that she had never formally given up her parental rights gave her some standing, and the laws around adult children supporting parents were complicated enough to make any legal fight long, costly, and stressful. The worst part, Marcus told me over dinner that Friday, is that she's counting on me settling. A public case could hurt my company, and she knows that. How much does she want? I asked. He set down his fork and looked at me. $200,000 to start. She's calling it retroactive child support. I felt dizzy. She says it's compensation for giving birth to me and sacrificing her youth by letting me be raised in a stable home. The nerve of it was unbelievable, paying her for abandoning him. And that's not all, Marcus continued. She also wants ongoing payments, $5,000 a month, $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year, for the rest of her life. You're not actually considering this, I said. I'm considering every option, he replied quietly. If we fight and win, legal fees alone could hit $50,000 or more, and that's without appeals. There's no guarantee. I could see the calculation happening in his mind, the same careful logic that had built his company. Pay her to make the problem disappear, or fight and risk money, time, and public damage. If you give her money now, I said firmly, she'll never stop. There will always be another demand, another excuse, another claim. I know, he said, but I also know fighting her could cost me everything I've worked for. That was the moment something settled inside me. There is another option, I said quietly. Marcus looked at me, surprised. What do you mean? I stood up and went to my bedroom, returning with the small metal box I kept hidden under my bed. The box that held every important document from our life together, including the letters. I've been keeping something from you, I said, placing the box on the table between us. Something that could change everything. Marcus looked at me cautiously. More secrets? Not secrets meant to protect you, I said softly. Evidence meant to protect us both. I opened the box and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were copies of every letter Nani had sent me over the years, along with notes I had kept about every phone call, every request for money, every time she spoke about Marcus as if he barely existed. She's been in contact with me for 24 years, I said, handing him the folder. And in her own words, she's documented exactly the kind of mother she's been. Marcus opened it and began to read. I watched his face change as he moved through the pages, letters where she described Marcus like a burden she had neatly passed on, summaries of calls where she asked for money but never once asked about her son. A clear, unbroken pattern of selfishness that stretched across decades. She wrote all of this? He asked quietly. Every word, I said. She never thought you'd see it, so she never tried to hide who she really was. He kept reading, then finally closed the folder and looked at me. "Why didn't you show me this before?" "Because I thought it would hurt you more than help you," I said honestly. "But now I think it might be exactly what we need." Marcus was silent for a long moment, staring at the folder. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and resolved. "She's not getting away with this." "What are you going to do?" I asked. He stood up, gathering both the folder and the documents her lawyers had given him. "I'm calling her lawyers, we'll see them in court, and I'm going to make sure everyone involved knows exactly who's making these claims." The certainty in his voice sent a feeling through me I hadn't felt since this began. Hope. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Once we start, there's no turning back." He looked at me, and for a moment I saw the little boy who once promised to protect me from monsters in the dark. "You spent 24 years protecting me from her," he said. "Now it's my turn to protect you." As he got ready to leave, something inside me finally loosened. The fight was far from over, but for the first time since Nani resurfaced, I believed we might actually win. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in November, 6 weeks after Nani first contacted Marcus. Those weeks blurred together into legal meetings, paperwork, and stress that touched every part of our lives. Marcus hired one of the best family law attorneys in the city, a sharp, focused woman named Rebecca Chen, who specialized in parental rights and financial exploitation cases. She reviewed Nani's letters and my records with clinical precision, building what she called an airtight case. "Your grandmother kept remarkable documentation," Rebecca told Marcus during a meeting I attended. "These letters show a clear, long-term pattern of abandonment and exploitation." But as the hearing drew closer, my confidence faded. I knew Nani better than anyone else in that courtroom would. I knew she wouldn't give up quietly. I could feel something coming, the way you sense a storm before the sky changes. The night before the hearing, Marcus came over for one last strategy talk. Rebecca had prepared him for the questions he might face and the arguments Nani's lawyers would likely make. "Are you ready?" I asked as we sat at the kitchen table, our coffee untouched. Marcus looked exhausted. The stress showed in his face, in the tension he couldn't quite shake. "I think so. Rebecca says our case is strong. The letters speak for themselves." He paused, then looked at me. "But," I gave a small smile, "I've known you for 24 years. I can hear the but coming." He sighed. "I keep thinking about what she said that first day, about not wanting things to become unpleasant for you. I'm worried she's planning something, a way to turn this around and make you look like the problem." His concern for me, even now, filled me with pride. "Marcus," I said gently, "whatever she says about me doesn't matter. What matters is the truth." "I know," he replied, "but you're 70. You shouldn't have to carry this kind of stress because of choices she made decades ago." I reached across the table and took his hand, feeling how strong and steady it was now. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "I carried 24 years of stress because of the choices she made when she was 23. This is nothing new to me." And for the first time that night, he didn't argue. This was it. The end of the road. The next morning we arrived at the courthouse early. Rebecca had warned us that Nelanie might try to turn the hearing into a performance, presenting herself as a heartbroken mother kept away from her child by an overbearing grandmother. She coached us carefully on how to respond, how to stay calm, how to focus on facts instead of emotions, no matter what Nelanie tried to provoke. Even so, nothing prepared me for seeing her again. She looked polished, impeccably so. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup flawless, and she wore a modest blue dress that made her look like a respectable suburban mother, someone you'd trust at first glance. The only thing that hadn't changed was her eyes. They still carried that sharp, calculating look I remembered from when she was a teenager. She arrived with 3 lawyers. 3. Far more than necessary for a simple hearing. But Rebecca had explained why. Nelanie's legal team wasn't just after money. They were trying to establish a broader legal argument, something that could be used in other cases. This wasn't personal to them. It was strategic. The moment Nalani saw Marcus, she began crying loudly. Not quiet, genuine tears, but dramatic sobs meant to be noticed. She reached toward him, calling out, "My son, my beautiful son," her voice echoing through the courtroom. Marcus took a step back, his face calm, controlled. "Hello, Nani." The use of her name instead of Mom clearly rattled her, but she recovered quickly. She turned to me with a smile that might have looked warm to a stranger. "Susan," she said sweetly, "you look wonderful. Thank you so much for taking such good care of my son all these years." I said nothing. Rebecca had told me not to engage, not to give her even a sliver of opportunity to twist my words. The hearing began with Nalani's lawyers presenting their case. They painted her as a young woman who had made a painful but loving choice, leaving her child with a capable relative while she worked to build a better future. They spoke of regret, longing, and a mother's enduring love. It was polished, emotional, and carefully constructed. If I hadn't lived the last 24 years myself, I might have believed them. Then Rebecca stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't appeal to emotion. She simply opened a folder and began reading Nalani's own words, letter after letter, messages where Nalani referred to Marcus as "your responsibility now," notes about her relief at not having to deal with baby stress, requests for money that never once asked how her son was doing. The atmosphere in the room shifted with every page. I watched the judge's expression change, skepticism replacing sympathy. This was not the voice of a mother who had sacrificed out of love. This was the voice of someone who had walked away and never looked back. Then Rebecca presented the phone records. 24 years of documentation, dates, times, detailed summaries. "Your Honor," Rebecca said calmly, "in 24 years of contact with the grandmother who raised her child, the plaintiff asked about Marcus's well-being exactly 0 times. She never asked about his health, his education, his happiness, or his emotional state. She never requested to speak with him. She never sent gifts, cards, or messages." The courtroom fell silent. Even Nalani's lawyers looked uncomfortable. "What she did ask for repeatedly," Rebecca continued, "was money, financial support for herself, without regard for the burden placed on the woman raising the child she abandoned." That's when Nalani lost control. "That's not true!" she shouted, jumping to her feet as her lawyers tried to stop her. "I was young and scared. I did what I thought was best. I knew he'd be better off with her. She always made me feel like I couldn't do anything right anyway." It was exactly what Rebecca had been waiting for. In a few emotional seconds, Nalani revealed who she really was, blaming others, excusing herself, taking no responsibility. "I loved him," Nalani continued, her voice rising. "I loved him enough to give him a better life. And now that he's successful, I deserve to benefit from that success. I'm his mother." The room held its breath, and that's when Marcus stood up. Marcus stood up slowly. His face was pale, but his voice was calm and unwavering. "Your Honor, may I respond?" The judge nodded. Marcus turned and faced Nalani for the first time since entering the courtroom. "You are not my mother," he said quietly, but with a certainty that filled the room. "A mother is the person who wakes up at 3 in the morning when her child has nightmares. A mother works multiple jobs to pay for school supplies and birthdays. A mother sits in hospital waiting rooms, teaches you how to ride a bike, and helps with homework even when she's exhausted." He gestured toward me. "That woman over there is my mother. She earned that title through 24 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion. You are someone who gave birth to me and chose to walk away." The judge called for a short recess. Nalani's lawyers crowded around her, clearly trying to regain control of the situation, but the damage was done. Her earlier outburst had shown exactly who she was, and no legal strategy could undo that. When the hearing resumed, Rebecca presented one final piece of evidence she had saved for last. A letter Nalani had written to me 3 years earlier, when Marcus was 21 and his company was beginning to succeed. In that letter, Nilani wrote that she was glad Marcus didn't know about her because it allowed her to start fresh without the burden of having an adult son. She added that she hoped he would continue to be successful because maybe one day it would be worth the effort to have a relationship with him. The words hung in the courtroom, heavy and undeniable. Even Nilani's lawyers looked defeated. "This is not a case about a mother seeking reconciliation," Rebecca said. "This is a case about someone attempting to profit from the success of a child she abandoned and ignored for 24 years. The evidence of abandonment and exploitation is overwhelming." The judge needed less than 10 minutes to decide. "I find that the plaintiff has no valid claim to financial support," he said. "The evidence shows a long pattern of abandonment and manipulation. The plaintiff's own statements directly contradict her current claims." He turned to Nilani. "Ms. Holloway, you chose to give up the responsibilities of motherhood 24 years ago. You cannot now demand the benefits of that relationship without accepting those responsibilities." Then he looked at Marcus. "Mr. Holloway, you have no legal or moral obligation to support someone who played no role in your upbringing and showed no genuine concern for your well-being." The gavel came down. It was over. As we gathered our things, Nilani rushed toward Marcus one last time, her face twisted with anger. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You owe me everything." Marcus looked at her calmly. "I don't owe you anything," he said. "And I never want to see you again." We walked out of the courthouse together, and for the first time in years, I felt light. The fear, the secrecy, the threat she had held over our lives, all of it was gone. But the real victory wasn't the ruling. It was watching Marcus walk away without looking back, his arm linked with mine, choosing the family that had chosen him. 5 months later, I'm sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sun set over the city. It's brighter here, quieter, with space and light I never thought I'd have again. Marcus insisted I move, saying he wanted me safe and comfortable. Leaving the old apartment wasn't easy. It held 24 years of memories. But this place brought something new: peace. For the first time since that rainy October night in 1999, I wake up without fear, without waiting for the past to knock on my door again. And that is worth everything. The court's decision was final and unmistakable. Not only did it confirm that she had no financial claims against Marcus, it also ruled that any future attempts to contact him would be considered harassment. For the first time in decades, the door was truly closed. Marcus still comes every Sunday, just as he always has. But now, our dinners feel different. Lighter. The quiet fear that had followed us for years, the worry that his biological mother might someday return and disrupt everything, is gone. We talk about the future freely now. We make plans without wondering if they'll be torn apart by a phone call or a letter. Today is special, though. Today marks exactly 25 years since Marcus came into my life, and tonight he's bringing someone new for me to meet. Her name is Sarah. She's an elementary school teacher downtown. And from the way Marcus talks about her, I already know she's important. I've been nervous all week, which feels silly at my age, but introducing the woman who may one day be his wife to the woman who raised him feels momentous, like the final piece of our family falling into place. The intercom buzzes at exactly 6. Marcus has always been punctual. "Gamma, we're here." When I open the door, I see Marcus standing beside a woman with kind eyes and dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She's pretty in an understated way, but what strikes me most is how naturally she fits beside him. "Gamma, this is Sarah," Marcus says, pride clear in his voice. "Sarah, this is my grandmother, Adela, but everyone calls her Gamma." Sarah steps forward and takes my hand. Her grip is warm and confident. "I've heard so much about you," she says. "Marcus talks about you all the time. I feel like I already know you." "Call me Gamma," I reply without thinking. It's who I've been for 25 years, and I hope what he said has been kind. She laughs, easy and genuine. "Only the best. He says you're the strongest woman he knows." As we settle into the living room, I find myself watching her closely. She asks about my life with sincere interest, not out of politeness. When Marcus shares stories from his childhood, she listens fully, laughing at the funny parts, clearly proud of him at the rest. What wins me over completely is the way she looks at him when she thinks no one's watching. There's love there, yes, but also respect, the kind of steady care that lasts through real life. Over dinner, Sarah talks about teaching second grade, about her students and the challenges they bring. She speaks about them with the same protective warmth I recognize instantly. She understands what it means to care deeply for children. "Marcus told me you raised him from the time he was a baby," she says as we finish eating. "That must have been incredibly hard." "It was the best thing that ever happened to me," I say honestly. "I didn't know it then. I was scared and overwhelmed. But Marcus gave my life meaning." She nods. "I can see how much you love each other." After dinner, Marcus helps me clear the table while Sarah looks at the photos around the apartment. Pictures of Marcus at every stage of his life, from his first professional photo at 6 months old, to his graduation, to the newspaper article about his company. "Gamma," Marcus asks quietly as we load the dishwasher, "what do you think of her?" I glance into the living room. Sarah is smiling softly at a photo from Marcus's 8th birthday. "I think she sees you for who you are," I say. "And she loves you for it." His face brightens. Then he reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a small velvet box. "I'm going to ask her to marry me." The ring inside is simple and elegant, perfectly her, but it's the look on Marcus's face that takes my breath away, pure joy, free of fear. "When?" I ask. "Next week," he says. "Dinner where we had our first date, then a walk through the park." He hesitates. "I wanted to show you first. I wanted your blessing." I smile and touch his cheek. "You have it. All of it. She's lucky. And so are you." When we return to the living room, Sarah is studying a photo from Marcus's high school graduation. "He was valedictorian," I say proudly. And as I watch them together, I realize something quietly wonderful. This isn't just the end of a long chapter, it's the beginning of a new one. "I know," Sarah says with a smile. "He's still the smartest person I've ever met, but more than that, he's the kindest. Did you know he volunteers at the Children's Hospital every month? He reads to kids who are going through long treatments." I didn't know that, and the surprise must show on my face because Marcus looks embarrassed. "It's nothing special, Gamma, just something I started doing a couple of years ago." But it is special. And it tells me everything I need to know about the man I raised. After the uncertainty, the struggle, the questions about his worth and identity, he became someone who gives back, someone who shows up for children who are facing hard moments of their own. As the evening winds down, Sarah helps me with the last of the dishes while Marcus steps onto the balcony to take a work call. We're alone for a moment, and I feel the need to say something important. "Sarah," I begin carefully. "Marcus didn't have an easy childhood. His mother wasn't able to be the parent he needed. There were painful, complicated parts of his life." She nods without hesitation. "He's told me about being left with you as a baby, about what happened recently, the court case, all of it. He doesn't hide things from me, and I respect that. I also know how much you protected him. And I want you to know something. I'll never let anyone hurt him if I can stop it." There's a fierceness in her voice that takes me straight back 25 years, standing in my small apartment, holding a baby I had sworn to protect. "I'm glad," I say simply. "He deserves that." When they're ready to leave, Marcus pulls me into one of his tight, familiar hugs. "Thank you, Gamma," he whispers, "for everything, for raising me, for protecting me, for loving me when it wasn't easy. I don't say it enough, but I wouldn't be who I am without you. You never have to thank me for loving you," I tell him. "That was never a sacrifice. It was a privilege." After they leave, I sit alone on my balcony as night settles over the city. I think about how different my life is from what I once imagined at 70. I thought I'd be alone by now, living quietly, visiting my husband's grave, filling my days with books and memories. Instead, I have a grandson who calls me every day, who values my advice, who includes me in his life and his future. I have a future daughter-in-law who treats me with warmth and respect. I have the promise of family gatherings, celebrations, and new memories still waiting to be made. Most of all, I have peace. The kind of peace that comes when you know the fight is over. Not just the legal one, but the long, quiet battle to build something good from abandonment and heartbreak. Tomorrow Marcus will call me in the morning like he always does. Sarah will probably say hello too. Next Sunday they'll come for dinner again. Maybe Marcus will have news. I'm not worried about her answer. I saw how she looked at him tonight. In a few years there may be a wedding to plan, grandchildren to spoil, a bigger table filled with louder laughter. But for now, it's enough to sit here, surrounded by 25 years of photos and memories, knowing that the family we chose is stronger than anything that tried to break us. The phone rings, and for just a second, old instincts make my heart jump. But when I answer, it's Marcus, his voice bright and breathless. "Gamma, I know we just left, but I had to call. Sarah said yes. We're engaged." I can hear her laughing in the background. "I'm so happy for you both," I say, and I mean it with everything I have. "We're thinking next fall," he adds. "Will you help us plan?" "Of course," I say. "I'd love to." When I hang up, I realize this is what happiness really looks like, not dramatic or loud, just deep, steady contentment. 25 years ago, a young woman left a baby on my doorstep, believing she was walking away from a burden. What she gave me instead was the greatest gift of my life, the chance to love completely, to matter deeply, to build something lasting. I kept my promise to that baby. I raised him with love and devotion. I protected him when he couldn't protect himself. Now he's protecting me. Some stories end with revenge, some end with justice. But the best ones end with love winning, with chosen families proving stronger than blood. This is our story. And it isn't over yet. Now I'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever lived through something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments. And on the final screen, you'll see 2 more stories from this channel that you might enjoy. Thank you for staying with me until the end.